If you are a caregiver, please put your name and your email in the chat in order to be eligible to be selected for the $50 gift card at the end of the session. Our next meeting is wow, this has come up really quickly. The OGKC Christmas celebration with Santa. That is going to be on December 13th. Hopefully everybody got the email notice or the notice that the registration was open on Saturday. So if you haven't registered your grandchildren or other relative children, please do. I think there's still openings in the registration for people to register. We are cutting it off at 75 children. So once we've reached that number, then registration will be closed. But if anybody's not been a part of this in the past years, we've done it the last couple of years. The children will get an opportunity to speak with Santa in person, of course, over Zoom. And then each child will receive a gift card sent in the mail after the celebration, hopefully as soon as that week, so people can get the gift cards and do whatever they need to do for Christmas. So we're looking forward to that again this year. It's always a good time, and the kids really have a good time. Santa loves to talk with them and talk about what's going on in their little lives. So it's really a good experience. If you want a certificate of attendance, just let me know. You can email me, and I'll arrange to have one made up and sent to you. And then now we are going to get into the presentation. It is being discussing Medicaid program and the SNAP program, the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, which has been in the news lately and a very important issue about what's been going on. Ms. Steinhauser is with the Advocates for Basic Legal Equality Incorporated, and she is a 1996 graduate of the University of Dayton School of Law. She started her law career as an AmeriCorps attorney and an advocate for basic legal equality. She specializes in housing issues, and in 1999, she was hired as a full-time staff attorney at the Legal Services of Northwest Ohio. She specializes in public benefits, benefit planning, and elder law. She's also been the managing attorney for healthcare and public benefits at the Advocates for Basic Legal Equality since July of 2013. She supervises the Medical Legal Partnership for Children since 2021. Over the past 20 years, she's done numerous trainings, and we've had her for previous trainings. She did an excellent presentation on SSI and presentations in public benefits and elder law. So we definitely will look to have her back about some of these other legal issues that people are interested in. So Ms. Steinhauser and Ms. Moog, we'll turn it over to you.
All right, thank you. So welcome everybody. As Ms. Turpin was saying, this has been certainly a timely topic. It was not a presentation that I could just drag out one of my old PowerPoints and make a few changes, because we've been closely tracking changes. I'm sure you all have heard things in the news, and so things are changing very quickly with public benefits, and not in a good way. So let me start by talking about the SNAP program in general. So SNAP, if you haven't heard the term, stands for Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, what we think of as the old food stamps program. So it's just a monthly payment that's made to low-income individuals or families to use to help them to get food. It really ends up being a supplemental, particularly in this day and age where things are so expensive. So it does help to get a little bit of additional money to apply towards food. It's generally applicable to people with household income at or below 130% federal poverty, but you can go over that amount in some cases for seniors and people with disabilities. So, and there are also specific medical expense deductions that seniors or people with disabilities can use as well. You don't have to have children to get SNAP. However, there is now a work requirement for SNAP, and I think that's been in place about 10 years now. It's changing as well, so everybody has to register for work. Well, not everybody, but the people that register are people between the ages of 18 to 64. It used to be 18 to 50, so that's been a significant change that came out of the Big Beautiful Bill Act. You must accept an offer of unemployment and you must continue suitable employment until it's no longer suitable or you're terminated for some reason beyond your control. Next slide. So some people are exempt from even having to register. So if you're basically if you're under 18 and in school, you do not need to register. If you're over age 60, if you're caretaker for a child under 6, if you're a caretaker for a person with a disability, if you're employed 30 hours a week, or earning wages equal to the federal minimum wage, which isn't very high, $7.25 an hour, multiplied by 30 hours. So you could qualify just if you're earning enough money. And we do. I have to say that most of the clients I see on SNAP are either people with disabilities, people who are seniors, or the working poor. Next slide. And so another thing that would exempt you from the work registration is if you have a disability, either a physical or mental health issue that makes you unfit to work. If you're already complying with OWF work requirements, that program has a work requirement as well. Or if you're participating in a drug or alcohol treatment and rehab program. So in this example here, Geppetto is 65. He's adopted a 4-year-old child, and his neighbor Salvatore is 43, receives SNAP benefits, as does Geppetto. And Salvatore tells Geppetto he had to complete a work registration requirement and advises Geppetto he'll probably have to register as well. So do you think he'll need to complete a work registration? You can drop an answer in the chat if you want. Okay, so somebody says in the chat no, and that's correct. Yes, he will not have to register because he actually has two exemptions. He's the caretaker for a child under 6, and he's 65 years old. So we call this for short ABODs. This population is the able-bodied adults without dependents. So every individual not exempt from work registration is an ABOD, and they're subject to work requirements unless they are under 18 or over age 64, they're pregnant, they're a parent of an assistance group member under age 14. So this is an important change here because it used to be a parent of an assistance group member under age 18. So it's kind of the term able-bodied adult without dependents is a little misleading now under the new rules because you could have a dependent, but if that dependent is between 14 and 17 or 18, you're still going to have to comply with that work registration unless you have another exemption. So the ABODs have to participate in and comply with a work experience activity or participate in 20 hours a week of SNAP education and training. The work can be paid or unpaid, so it could be volunteer work. And then There is also an exemption for domestic violence survivors. So, and you can be sanctioned for not registering or participating in your education or training. So a sanction means when Job and Family says you don't get benefits for it could be anywhere from a month to 6 months. You can avoid sanctions if you have a good cause reason for not complying. So these are just examples of good cause reasons for leaving employment. So there could be discrimination, there could be conditions that render your employment unreasonable for some reason. You could be enrolling into school or higher education that requires you to move. Maybe retirement, something that's recognized as retirement, or the employment becomes unsuitable for some reason. So there are arguments you can make. Next slide. So time limits are really important as well. So time limits had been waived for people in certain counties throughout Ohio. I think there were about 8 counties. I think we had 2 of them were counties we served. But they were counties where there were unusually high unemployment limits. They've done away with those waivers for those counties. So now you can only receive 3 months of SNAP within a 3-year period unless you are determined to be complying with the registration and the work requirements. So your payment could differ, and it does differ depending on household size, income, and expenses. So I think the minimal payment somebody can get is $28. They will give that to seniors or people with disabilities, even though they're pretty much almost over the income limits just because that's the minimum. But people do receive considerably more. So it depends on how many people are determined to be in your household. Do you pay rent or mortgage, and how much is that? Do you pay utilities? Do you have childcare? If you're a person with a disability or a senior, do you have medical expenses over $35? You can claim child support payments that you pay as well. So the benefits are issued onto an electronic benefit card called an EBT card, and can only be used to purchase food items. And there is some proposed legislation out there trying to limit even further the types of food items that people could purchase. So that's out there as well. I've included a maximum allotment. So this chart just shows you what the basic income limits are for SNAP and TANF, which is our OWF program, and what what the top dollar amount is that they'd be able to receive if they are eligible for SNAP benefits. Next slide. So in this example, the Keebler family is struggling financially after Kip's hours at the cookie factory are reduced. His income's $24,000 a year, but his wife is a stay-at-home mom, and they have 3 minor elves, and they're currently paying $700 a month for food, but their mortgage is $800, and they pay $200 a month for property tax and homeowners insurance. Their attorney, Ashley Soha, Ashley is one of my colleagues over at Columbus Legal Aid, suggests the family apply for SNAP so they'll have more money available for living expenses. How much can they expect to receive? Next slide. So I actually did a calculation, and so if they applied for SNAP, they would get about $1,004 because they have 3 kids, they're paying utilities, they have a mortgage, so that all adds up. So if you think you could be eligible for SNAP, or you know folks that might be eligible that haven't, because I run into people client sometimes, and they say, "Well, I work, I wouldn't be eligible." And and I say, "Yeah, you probably would, because if you have 3 kids and you work at Walmart, you probably don't earn very much, so you very well may be eligible." So it never hurts to apply. So SNAP during the government shutdown, this was current as of November 13th, which was Thursday. So, as most of you probably heard, SNAP benefits were on hold in November. There were 2 federal court decisions, one out of Rhode Island, one out of Massachusetts, which ordered the current administration to make those full SNAP benefits. As most of you also know, the administration appealed. At one point, 65% of payments were issued. That may not be the case in all states. It kind of depends on how updated your computer system. As of Thursday, 100% of benefits were supposed to be issued. I know I've had some clients who have received their benefits. That may differ by county. I think they should be in midweek, hopefully, in Ohio. And that will include any benefits you didn't receive back to November 1st. So other changes that have come about from the OBA bill of 2025. So immigrants who may have been eligible for SNAP before have lost eligibility. That is a change that took effect immediately. So we used to have immigrants that were eligible for SNAP with no waiting period. So that included refugees, human trafficking victims, abuse victims with VAWA petitions. And VAWA petition is a Violence Against Women Act. So if a person is like married to a citizen, and they can file what's called a VAWA petition, and can receive benefits. Asylees. So there are some immigrants that are still eligible. So if you're a US national but not a citizen, if you're a Cuban and Haitian entrant, so most of I don't run into many Cuban entrants. I've had just a handful of them over my career, but we run into many Haitian entrants. We work with the Haitian community in both in Springfield and in Lima. And most of those folks are Haitian entrants, so they are actually eligible for SNAP. Although a lot of them are working now, so and some of them have such good jobs they don't qualify for SNAP anymore. But for those that are not working or working not earning much, they should qualify. And then people, I also don't see these people very often, but there's another category called Compacts of Free Association, COFA citizens. They will still qualify. Next slide. As well as lawful permanent residents. So most of those individuals need to serve a 5-year waiting period before they're eligible, but there are some exceptions. So no waiting period for under 18. If you have 40 qualifying work quarters. So what that means is when most of us work who are in Social Security covered employment, we accumulate what are called work quarters. So essentially 40 work quarters means you've had 10 years of work. If you're blind or disabled, you will qualify. If you've been lawfully residing in the US and 65 or older as of August 22nd, 1996, that is the magic date. That is when the WARA Act passed. And so people who were here on or before that date will qualify with no waiting period. If you have a US military connection, either yourself, a spouse, or a child of a veteran, admitted to the US as an Amerasian immigrant, again, we don't have many of those that I run into, an American Indian born abroad, or some Hmong or Highland Laotian tribal members. So these are folks that would qualify without that waiting period. So one thing to look out for is that JFS should look at somebody's current immigration status before terminating. So they're not great at doing this. So if somebody came in as a refugee or an asylee and they were eligible 2 years ago, it's possible they're a licensed permanent resident now, and JFS just doesn't know that. So they should make sure to ascertain their current status. Also, the 5-year bar for immigrants doesn't apply to those who didn't have a bar to begin with. So even if refugees don't qualify now, if they have become an LPR and they don't have those 5 years yet, they can still get their SNAP benefits. That's one thing that didn't change with the bill. I don't know if that's a loophole they forgot to tie up, but it's out there. Next slide. So we're going to switch over to Medicaid and health benefits. So Medicaid's broad. There are several different Medicaid programs. So there's Medicaid based on just income for seniors, people with disabilities, families with kids. There's Medicaid waivers. There's what we call HCAP, which is hospital charity assistance for some folks that qualify. And we're going to talk about due process and how to appeal. Next slide. So health programs are administered by the county departments of Job and Family Services, the Ohio Department of Medicaid, Social Security administers the Medicare program. So generally it's 45 days when you apply for Medicaid. That's the amount of time they need to give you an answer as to the application. Most programs have an income limit, exception for Medicare. There's no income limit there, but there is an income limit for what we call the Medicare savings programs. So those are the programs that help you with paying your Medicare premium. So most of the programs are going to look at your gross income, so your income before taxes are taken out. Next slide. So this is just a Medicaid standard sheet. It shows you the income limits by number of people in the household. You can apply online for Medicaid. You can apply by phone at the Medicaid hotline. You can apply in person at your Job and Family Services office. So there's medical coverage for individuals with low income. So it's up to 200% of federal poverty for minors and pregnant women. Plus, pregnant women are covered for 1 year after having the child, even if their income increases. So to give you an example of income limit, that's about $35.25 a month for a household of 200% poverty. So other adults go up to about 133% of federal poverty. And for somebody who's on Medicare already, you have to be pretty low income to get Medicaid. Your income would have to be 967 or lower. Unless there are some Medicaid programs that you could qualify for. We'll talk about those later. So a baby born to a Medicaid eligible mother would be automatically eligible for Medicaid for a year, as we talked about. So there was generally good coverage, minimal copays, no deductibles. Some copays are going to be added under the new OBA bill. That's not taking effect right away, but it is in the future. Up to 3 months of retroactive coverage now, but in 2026, that's going to 1 month of retroactive coverage. The vast majority of people on Medicaid are receiving that Medicaid through what we call managed care plans now. So there are 7 different managed care plans in Ohio. I see very few people getting what we call fee for service, which is sort of original Medicaid. So less well-known categories, but very useful categories of Medicaid. There's a category of Medicaid, been around about 17 years now. I remember going throughout the state training people on this program because it's a really cool program for people with disabilities that are employed. So you have to have a disability, you have to be working, but you can be working as few as 3 or 4 hours a month. And this can be a way that you can get folks on Medicaid who might not otherwise qualify. So the income limits are high. It's 250%. And you can get it even if you're over that income limit with a premium. But they have one good thing floating around right now is there's a rule that's being proposed to eliminate those premiums. So I don't know the status of that right now, but it is in the proposal stage. So, and this will also allow you to receive Medicaid if you're on Medicare, which Medicaid expansion will not. So another good program that's been around for, I think, 8 years now is the Specialized Recovery Services Program. We call that SRS for short. So you have to be at least 21 years of age. And this started out as a program for people with severe and persistent mental illness, and then it expanded. So then they added people with HIV/AIDS, and then they added people who with end-stage renal disease, and now they're adding even more chronic conditions to this list. So sickle cell anemia, cystic fibrosis, hemophilia, lots of different cancers would qualify you to get Medicaid through this program. And it's a little different than the other programs in that you have to go through an assessment to be determined eligible. It's not just looking at your income and your assets. So you go through that assessment, they determine whether you're eligible, and then there's monthly case management that's required every month, usually consisting of just a phone call or a check-in meeting with a case manager. But it does provide full Medicaid, just like any other Medicaid program.
Stephanie,
So,
we have, I'm sorry, Rebecca.
yeah,
I'm looking at somebody else's name. There's a question in the chat. I'm going to read
okay.
it. And this is more, I guess, around SSI, but I'm sure you can address it. If a person is in the process of applying for SSI, would working a low-wage 20-hour per week job prohibit approval?
Approval for which program? For SSI
That
or SNAP or
well, they specifically asked. This is Tony Beery.
okay.
Specifically asked for
Oh,
about
for
SSI.
SSI.
Mm-hmm.
Not necessarily. So with SSI, the standard is, are you employed at what we call SGA? So that's substantial gainful activity. It's a dollar amount that they look at. So if the person's earning less than, I think it's about $1,605 a month, then they will still qualify. Like they'll still meet that minimal income limit to qualify. But if they're working and they do end up getting approved for SSI, then they're going to reduce the amount of the benefit based on how much they were earning. It doesn't
Okay.
reduce dollar for dollar. They actually count less than half of what you earn. So yes, that was a long answer, long-winded way probably to say yes. You can be working part-time, just keep a close eye on how much you're earning. And it's gross dollars, so not what you receive in your paycheck, but what you're actually earning.
Okay. Thank you for that. And then another question on this the Specialized Recovery Services
Yeah.
Medicaid, um, can a person be working in order to qualify for that, or are they completely unemployed?
No, you don't have to be completely unemployed. They just have to determine, do you have a severe and persistent mental illness? And are you under 250% poverty? So I'm guessing if you have a severe and persistent mental illness, if you're working, you're probably not working full time.
Right,
So,
right.
because you probably wouldn't be eligible to. And so they do come and they review your medical records and they have to make that determination. Are you severe enough? But remember, there are also those other diagnoses that are on the list.
Hmm.
So if
Of,
you just Google SRS conditions list, it'll probably pop up a list that links to that regulation. And it'll show you which conditions are on the list, because the list is growing and growing.
okay, well, thank you. That's something wasn't aware of, so that's an important program.
Yeah, it's very underutilized, and there are many people at Job and Family Services that don't understand what it is. So that makes it
Mm,
even more difficult to just get the word out about it.
right. Well, I
Um,
appreciate you getting it.
Yeah,
Uh,
so generally with Medicaid, Medicaid's going to cover what's considered to be medically necessary. So when you're looking at medical necessity, you look at things like, is it the least costly alternative? Is
mm,
it something that's typically used in the medical community? You know, is it not experimental? Things like that. Is it going to treat the condition for which you're receiving the treatment? Or is it going to treat the condition for which you're prescribing whatever this is? So there's a special standard though for kids under 21. They have broader coverage guidelines. So it's what we call the EPSDT program, early and periodic screening, diagnostic, and treatment. So it covers all screenings for kids. You cannot impose coverage limitations, even if those are allowed for adults. And there's a broad standard. So if you can make the argument, you know, this piece of equipment will ameliorate or sort of lessen the burden of a problem, not cure the problem necessarily, then it may be medically necessary under EPSDT. So we use this argument a lot because I take cases for kids who need medical equipment. A lot of times that medical equipment is expensive. So we've done things like robotic arms that are $75,000. So obviously they get denied immediately, but yet having that arm gives a child the independence and self-determination they need to just be more like an average child. So, but we usually have to fight for those items, but we usually end up getting them under these EPSDT arguments.
So for our kinship caregivers that have children in their care that
Yeah.
they're not biological, this is something that they could apply for if they feel like they have like, well, we go down here to cover screenings and vision and dental hearing services. Um, so in order to be eligible for this, are there certain conditions that the child has to meet in addition to being under 21?
Well, the child, the EPSDT program, any kid on Medicaid is gonna be given the benefits of the EPSDT. That's just the federal law that applies to kids Medicaid. So whether a child qualifies, the child would have to meet certain income guidelines to qualify, but the income guidelines for kids are higher. So, but once a child is on, yeah, you have those broader coverage guidelines. Not that they're not still going to try to argue about not covering something, but we have good arguments we can make to get something covered. So if you all have kids in your care that have medical disabilities and and it's not just equipment, it could be services. So it could be medications maybe that are expensive that they don't want to pay for. So just keep in mind that there are those standards that apply to kids that are a little bit broader that make it easier for us to get things for kids sometimes and for adults.
So how do our caregivers know that their children are covered under this? I mean, say they want to, they want to take the child to get a med or a dental screening or a vision screening. Does having the Medicaid card automatically
Yes,
then
right.
pay for the, okay,
Having the
okay,
Medicaid card automatically should make them eligible for all of those screenings I've listed here. Because that's part of screening, and there's a very big emphasis on prevention. So if we have kids coming in getting their dental and their hearing and all those regular health screenings, then the argument is we're preventing further and more severe health problems from happening at a later time. So yes, if a child's on Medicaid, he or she is going to benefit from all these things I've listed here.
okay, good. Thank you.
Next slide. So, okay, did we go back? Because we already talked about the Medicaid buy-in and yeah. Okay, so common issues with Medicaid. So there can be delays in processing Medicaid applications. As I talked about the Medicaid buy-in for workers with disabilities or the SRS program, a lot of times they're not well known at your county Department of Job and Family Services. If somebody is being terminated from a Medicaid program, for instance, if somebody's on what we call Medicaid expansion, which some of you may know that as the Obamacare program. Once they go on Medicare, and this again, this isn't going to apply to most kids, but if you all have kids in your care that maybe are over 18 that could be getting Medicare, if they have disabilities, once you go on Medicare, you get terminated from Medicaid expansion, but anytime they're terminating you from any Medicaid program, the Job and Family Services is required to do what's called pre-termination review, which is look and see if you might qualify for any other category of Medicaid. And so they often forget to look at this Medicaid buy-in or the specialized recovery services. So that's another thing to look out for. Another thing we see quite frequently is denials of coverage for services like home health care or other treatments that require what we call prior authorization. So I would put the medical equipment in there as well. Next slide. Medicaid waivers, some of you may have heard of Medicaid waivers. So these are programs for people with serious chronic health conditions that allow them to stay in their home, not have to go into a group home or a nursing home. You can sometimes get things like a home health aide coming into your home modifications, transportation. There are waivers that are through Job and Family Services. Those are home care waivers. There's Passport, which is specifically for seniors age 60 or older. And then there are developmental disability waivers. So those are for both children and adults who have disabilities that have manifested before age 22. And there are 3 different waivers through the Board of DD. Next slide. So common issues with waivers, long waiting lists. So for the Board of Developmental Disabilities, they have changed the They changed the process 7 years ago to make it easier. We used to have waiting lists that would be 20 years long. Now we don't have those waiting lists. Um, and when we do, they're not very long. The problem is there's now an assessment process, and they decide whether you have current needs, which are needs within the next year, immediate needs, which are needs within the next 30 days, or no needs, which means they don't think you have needs that are high enough to get a waiver. So we found county boards making very subjective decisions just because they don't want to pay for people to have waivers. Because with a DD waiver, 40% of the cost falls on the county, which makes it hard, particularly for smaller counties or lower funded counties, to actually provide all the waivers that may be necessary. It's a really broken system that they tried to fix with this change in 2018, and it didn't fix it. It just changed the problem. We also see denial or reduction of home care hours through Job and Family Services. Next slide. So there are also going to be changes to Medicaid benefits for immigrants. So no changes yet. The first changes are going to take place in 2026. So currently eligible for Medicaid benefits are licensed lawful permanent residents, refugees, asylees, Cuban Haitian entrants, parolees for more than a year. So we've seen a couple Ukrainians, and I think most of them are coming in on parolee status. Victims of human trafficking, VAWA petitioners, military families. So this is current eligibility as of today. But as of October 1st of next year, what's going to happen will be that only these groups that you see here are going to be eligible. Licensed lawful permanent residents. Again, with those 5-year residency requirements, with those same exceptions we talked about with SNAP. Cuban and Haitian entrants and the COFA population. Next slide. So it's really, really shrinking who's eligible for Medicaid next year. Retroactive coverage is going to go from 3 months to 1 month. So Medicaid redeterminations are going to increase, which is more paperwork and time for both our clients and Job and Family Services, which usually leads to people getting terminated when they shouldn't be terminated. And what we call the FMAP, which what the FMAP is the FMAP is the percentage that the federal government pays towards Medicaid. That is decreasing after this year, after December 31st of this year, which means there's going to be less federal funding available for states, which means states are going to have to find ways to cut their Medicaid programs, unfortunately. Next slide. They're also implementing work requirements. That's going to be in 2027. That's going to be for the Medicaid expansion population. Very similar to the SNAP work requirements that we discussed. So it could be paid or volunteer, ages 18 to 64. Next slide. There are going to be exemptions for people with disabilities, kids under 18, caregivers for people with a disability or a child under 14. And all of these exemptions look great, but in practice, we have found that getting an exemption can be easier said than done. And we have seen in states that Alabama was a state that actually had a work requirement for Medicaid. It failed miserably. Many, many people who should have had exemptions or been eligible for Medicaid ended up getting kicked off the program. So that's our concern. And that's why we argued against it, but it will be taking effect, absent some kind of other change in the law next in 2027. And then some changes in 2028. So, there may be co-pays up to $35 for some services, which, sadly is going to make Medicaid really not useful for a lot of our clients, depending on what services they're receiving. So there are going to be exemptions for primary care, mental health, and substance use, but there could be out-of-pocket costs of $35 for services. That's to be capped at 5% income. But most of the clients we're seeing coming through our doors are dealing with bare minimum income as it is. They don't need co-pays on top of all their other expenses. They are going to allow providers to deny treatment if people haven't paid their copay, but providers can also waive or reduce copays if they choose to. Next slide. So that's it. SNAP and Medicaid in a nutshell. I'm sorry, this is a totally different landscape presentation than I would have given this time last year. And I was changing this quite a bit, particularly with SNAP as I went along. But I know people have had some questions in the chat. Does anybody have additional questions they want to ask? Either put them in the chat or come off mute.
Right. Are there any additional questions or points of clarifications or even your own personal story with any type of you know dealings with Medicaid or the SNAP program that you've experienced? Let's see, here's one. How would one need to register for work?
Okay, so you register for work at the County Department of Job and Family Services when you apply for SNAP. They give you all that information, your rights, your responsibilities, and will explain how you need to do that if you're not one of those people that's exempt from registration.
And I think in caregivers cases, most of them are looking to especially the Medicaid program. I think we have always historically think known that if they apply for Medicaid for the individual child, that child is going to be eligible based on their own circumstances, not connected
Yeah,
to
so
that caregiver.
yeah, it's a little bit different with you all because it's going to be counted as a child only case. Um,
Right. Now, but the other thing that popped up when concerned me is that for those caregivers who have children that are over 14, then that child becomes ineligible for Medicaid at that point.
no, the child's still eligible for Medicaid.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah. Um, right. I mean, they're looking because the child has no obligation to work.
Okay. All right. Um, and then let me see. Oh, I think the one point that you did make that I think is very important is don't try to exclude yourself automatically based on what other people have said or that kind of thing. Go ahead and apply for
Yes.
these benefits, especially when she was talking about food stamps, because yeah, the food situation in kinship families are, it can be very challenging. So please just go ahead to your Job and Family Services and apply and let them determine you either eligible or not eligible. And I think the other part of it is that if they are determined ineligible for certain programs that they've applied for, they are given hearing rights. Is that correct? Is that still in place?
That's correct. Yes.
Okay.
You always, and they do make mistakes, and sometimes they don't consider programs that somebody might be eligible for, those ones that I was talking about that are a little more obscure.
Right.
So, yes, I always encourage folks, get out there, apply for SNAP. If they deny you and you think you shouldn't have been denied, then by all means appeal that. And then also don't forget your exemptions. So if there are folks that are being told you have to work and you think you have an exemption, then keep that in mind as well.
Right. And we will, it's been indicated that we will be provided with these, the slides from the PowerPoint, and we will post these
Yes.
on our OGKC website under resources. So you can go to the, go back into the web or the PowerPoint at any point and look at through those. There's a question about the eligibility through the age of 18, I'm assuming for Medicaid, in a kinship care situation.
Yes.
Mhm.
And kids even beyond that are eligible through age 21.
Okay,
And especially it's to keep in mind those broad coverage guidelines apply until a child's 21.
right.
And then
Okay.
depending on income, Medicaid is kind of strange. Like we don't calculate eligibility in the same ways that we used to. I didn't get into that in the PowerPoint, but Medicaid expansion program looks at your tax filing status to determine what your household is. So it's quite possible a household might be dad who lives outside the house and minor child who dad claims that lives with mom, and then mom is a household of her own. So
Mm,
it's almost like a puzzle sometimes trying to figure out who's in the household,
right,
whether they pay taxes, whether somebody claims them to determine eligibility.
right, right. Yeah, it
Um,
is a complex system, and that's why it's a nice benefit to have somebody like you who's not necessarily in the system but knows the system to give some honest kinds of advice to people and not try to minimize the eligibility pieces for people. Um, so it's been very helpful. The other piece that you mentioned about the redeterminations, now that will apply also to caregivers for the children that they have, that they'll have to start doing those twice every year in
yes,
26.
unfortunately, yes,
Oh,
that will
wow.
apply to everyone. They also like I was telling Ronald before we started, the USDA has declared that they want folks to reapply for SNAP, but there's no plan in place yet for that. Like, so we're not sure, will that happen? If
Mm,
so, when will it happen? So there's no like start date or any details about that. So that's yet another thing that I think we're loading on the backs of folks who already have too much on their shoulders, and
all
including the
right,
people that work at JFS. This is just going to
all
be a
right.
lot.
Stay tuned for that. Karen Kimbrough, you have your hand up. Do you have a
Yeah,
question?
you've been waiting
Ye-
patiently,
I'm
Karen.
sorry, I missed that.
Thank you. That's okay. Um, the question I have is I'm going to be retiring in about a year and a half.
Okay.
Did you say I had to put in for Medicare like 3 months in advance? Or
Usually when you're Medicare eligible, like, are you 65 yet?
no, not yet.
Okay.
64.
Usually you'll get a package from Social Security saying to apply. That usually comes about 3 months before you turn 65.
Okay. Okay.
And then so you can apply for that. And then Medicare A is going to be free for you, but Medicare B, it's currently $185 monthly premium. That's what pays for when you go to the doctor. Medicare D is a prescription program, and you have to choose a prescription plan. So there's all these parts to Medicare.
I know this is out of what you're talking about presently, but I know you've discussed this before. For SSI for children that are in the care of our caregivers, at what age can they apply for SSI if that child has a a disability that they think may qualify.
They can apply from birth. You know, we have babies that get on SSI depending on
Okay.
their health condition.
So it doesn't, it won't connect to the caregiver's ability to, financial situation?
I mean, things work a little bit differently with the kinship caregivers, and I have to admit I am not as familiar, but I don't
Okay,
think they're like looking at your income.
okay, so it's a more like a child-only
Yeah,
situation.
right.
Okay. Um, any other questions or we've had a lot of comments in the chat about how great this has been and how helpful, and we're glad because like you said, this is a fluid situation right now, changing from day to day, and still some things
Yes.
are still up in the air. So we'll just have to keep watching the news and stay on top of things. But we very much appreciate giving us the update as closest to the timely as possible. So we appreciate that. And our board member, Ron Browder, is on the line. Ron, did you want to offer any words at this moment? Oh, maybe he's stepped away. Well, I know he's very appreciative of the presentation today too. So I'm going to announce, we've had a lot of caregivers on here, which I am glad that they were able to come and take advantage of this. I know a lot of them, are in situations where there are questions. So the caregiver who's going to be receiving the $50 gift card for this meeting is Tony Beery. And I think Tony, she's very, I think, new. I think she's been on before, but we're glad that you joined us today, and all the other caregivers. Thank you. And please, if you didn't get a chance over the weekend to register your kiddos for the Christmas program, go into the link that we sent out over last Wednesday. Go into that link to Eventbrite and get those kids registered so they can talk with Santa, and and make sure that they get their Christmas list to you so you know what they want. So thank you. Any other questions, or everything is, thank you for everything. So thank you, Rebecca, and thank you to your aide for coming along and doing the PowerPoint, and we appreciate all the information.
Yes, and if anybody has questions, feel free to reach out. The PowerPoint, Jennifer forwarded the PowerPoint to you, Barb,
Okay,
and people
great.
are welcome to reach out to me if they have questions specifically
Okay.
applying to them.
All right. Well, thank you very much for that. So everybody have a wonderful rest of the day and enjoy our good weather for right now. And hopefully we'll see you in December to celebrate the holidays, and everybody have a great Thanksgiving coming up. Thank you.